What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show DFS for Dough here on RotoGrinders. I am Justin Van Zuiden, aka STL Cardinals 84. We'll be hosting the show as usual. We brought back the three-man booth for US Open Week. Should be a lot of fun. So happy to introduce my two co-hosts, as usual, Mr. Notorious, Derek Farnsworth on one side. Noto, what's going on?
Yeah, not much. Excited for the week. Always a fun week to look forward to when it comes to the majors. Didn't have the best week ever last week. Had like three guys in contention. None of them could get the job done. But what a finish from Nick Taylor there. So I'm sure we'll talk about that. But man, these non-elevated events have sure delivered, even though they haven't had the strongest fields.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really fun tournament. No shortage of, you could argue that there was maybe 20 or so players in contention on Sunday as Rory backed up a little bit. And some of the other guys came back to the field. And Taylor, I believe, made the cut on the number or one above the number. And then, shot like 9 under on Saturday to get in the mix. And then it just goes to show you that if you make the weekend, you got a chance. And, of course, a Canadian winning the Canadian Open. You've got Tommy Fleetwood kind of, depending on your perspective, choking it away-ish there at the end. You've got Adam Hadwin getting tackled by security, just all sorts of things happening there. And the playoff was fairly lengthy, too. So it was quite the finish on Sunday, but cool to see a Canadian win the Canadian Open for the first time in a long time. We've talked about that curse over the years, so I guess that's lifted with Taylor draining a huge eagle putt to win the tournament. But we've got Hondizzzle as well, Jacob Horton, who joined us, filled in for me the week that I was on vacation, but had joined us prior to that for the PGA Championship as well. We did the snake draft with him for the first time, and I believe he took that down, if I remember correctly. So we'll see if he can keep that major streak alive. But Jacob, thanks for joining us again, and how's things going?
Going well. Excited for the week. I think there's a lot to unbox this week. We got a U.S. Open that's on a course we haven't seen, so there's a lot of moving parts. Excited to get into it and figure some things out.
Yeah, we'll dig right into that here, just in the interest of time. A lot of times we spend a little more time going back at last week, but just some quick thoughts. Again, Taylor beat Fleetwood in the playoff. You had Hatton in the mix as well. Strong week for guys that have been playing well over the last month or so. You had Justin Rose up there again. Eric Cole has had a really good season. Old standby Doug Gim with a top 15 last week. Adam Hadwin, before getting laid out by security, top 15 of his own. Guys like Will Gordon, Matt Kuchar, Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, all finishing inside the top 20 as well. But Noto, any other takeaways for you from the tournament last week?
Yeah, the other course was pretty cool. Other than 18, everyone hated on 18 because you were hitting, 5-iron and then 3-wood into the green. It was kind of weird the way they just had to lay up to like 250, 260 yards. But I thought the course held its own. Played a little tougher than we kind of expected. The rough was really thick. But yeah, you had some crazy rounds. Nick Taylor, you mentioned, made the cut on the number or 1 under. He shot 75 in the first round, 3 over, and then ended up winning. Hatton, like you mentioned, went 72-64, 72-64. So I was kind of tilting to him because I had an outright on him. And, once Taylor made that birdie on 18, my chances were dashed. And then Fleetwood made his birdie on 17. And I made the mistake of tweeting out, "Oh, congrats to Tommy for winning," because I kind of figured, he could birdie 18. Everybody else has been birdieing that all day. And everyone that bet on Tommy wasn't too happy with my tweet there. So, yeah, a little jinx. Apologies to anybody that had a ticket on Hatton. But, awesome finish from Nick Taylor. Obviously, we got to talk about Adam Hadwin getting tackled by security. That was, one of the funnier moments so far on the PGA Tour. And, yeah, it looked like a blast being there. The whole crowd was just raucous. And, they were all in on Nick Taylor. I also thought it was kind of cool seeing, some of the British guys sticking around for Tommy. We saw Lowry and Hatton, and can't remember who else was there, but there were a lot of players, sitting around 18 rooting for their guy, which I thought was kind of cool for something that wasn't a major.
Yeah, just an interesting atmosphere there. Of course, Hadwin has, for his part, kind of, taking the blame for rushing the green there, but a really good form tackle by the security guard. The NFL should be going to sign him up. It's just a nice waist level tackle, no blow to the head or anything like that. But Jacob, any other takeaways from the Canadian Open for you?
In addition to everything Noto said, the elephant in the room, right? The big merger. I thought that was obviously a big for the world of golf, and just sort of figuring that out moving forward, right? Like how do people look at things? How do the players react? So like how will that even going into this week, right? So non-elevated event, like how many times are these guys going to get asked that question this week, right? Like how much of a distraction is that going to be?
Yeah, and that news had just broken. So we did last week's show on Tuesday. We did it a day later, and it was actually the day the news broke. So we didn't know. I guess we don't know a whole lot more than we did then. But especially going into a major week this week, and now you've got the live guys there as well with this week's tournament. It's going to be really interesting to see kind of how all that plays out in the midst of a U.S. Open, and how the media reports come out this week, and the press conferences and things like that. And it's going to be another fascinating week of golf. It's also, if you're in the States, it's West Coast time with the tournament in LA. So it's going to be a later lock than normal, and maybe some prime time golf. If you're on the East Coast, that never stinks to be able to watch golf in prime time. So it will be a fun tournament this week, a course that we have not seen. I did watch a couple videos today and fly over and things of that nature, trying to get a feel for how the course is going to play. It's a par 70 as tradition for the U.S. Open, but 3 par 5s and 5 par 3s here at Los Angeles Country Club. And so a course that for a par 70 is certainly going to play pretty long. But Noto, what have you uncovered on the course this week?
Yeah, we've got NBA official Scott Foster in the chat. He says he's at LACC right now. So if you have any tips for us, feel free to put them in the chat. I can't wait to see this course. Typically we always get excited for a major, and we kind of learn about the course, as the week goes on. But, man, people have been looking forward to this event for over a year now. Like you mentioned, I've watched a couple videos as well. And it looks like a much different U.S. Open test than we typically see. Typically we have whoever hits the longest and straightest is going to give themselves the best chance to win. And I think this course is going to kind of require more of an all-around test. The fairways here, there are some that are extremely wide. I mean, up to 80 yards wide. I think number 13 or 14. And most of them have, a lot of undulation to them. If it does play firm and fast, you're going to see about 50 yards. These are awesome. Visually appealing. They have like the thick, lush rough around them. So those are going to be cool. They are, heavily defending all of the greens. The greens, they're not just one shape. Some of the greens are narrow. Some of them are shallow. Some of them are big. Some of them are small. You have a drivable par 4 in play. 3 par 5s. The par 3s, everybody's going to be talking about. 2 of them are over 285 yards. I don't think they're going to play that way, all 4 days, because the way that they set up the tees, they can play around with them. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be an awesome course. I do think it's kind of going to require, I've heard some people say it's more of a second shot golf course just because it is so, wide off the tee. There's a barranca that cuts through a lot of the holes, which is cool. No water hazards, but there is some out of bounds in play as well. So, yeah, I'm excited. I think all around is kind of your best bet. It's going to play a little bit different than most Southern California courses like Torrey Pines and Riviera and those. But, yeah, I want to hear your guys' thoughts because I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob. What do you think of the course this week?
Excited to watch it like Noto. I think that, we get a new venue. You have to keep in mind that the one thing that's consistent is how the USGA does business, right? It's always going to be thick, rough. Now, will it be as much of a penalty when they miss fairways? My early read is pretty wide fairways, so not as much, but around the greens, I think so, right? Typically, you think of USGA events, and I've been at a few clubs where we've had qualifiers. It's par's always kind of a good score. They always like to protect the score of par. So course setup, I've heard some cool stuff like 1 par 3 that's like 120 something yards could maybe play as little as 80. So, I mean, again, I think that the last thing that they're going to want to do at a new venue is embarrass the members and allow these guys just to tear it up. So they will probably get it firm and fast. Few under par should win. I don't think that driving accuracy, when I was growing up, U.S. Opens were always you just had to keep it in play off the tee to have a chance. I don't think that's the case this year at this course, but definitely some accurate second shots, a lot of long second shots as well.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be a lot of 175 plus yard shots. Noto mentioned the long par threes. With the drivable par four, conceivably, I guess we could have a day where a par three plays longer than a par four if they want to set it up that way. But it will be fascinating to see how this plays. The back nine is 300 and some yards longer than the front nine, which I think is interesting because the front nine also has 2 of the par fives. So just based on what you see on the scorecard, it would stand to reason that the front is going to play easier. But there's also more hazards cutting across the holes on the front side. So maybe a little bit more risk reward on the front and then just kind of trying to hold on for dear life on the back, particularly the closing stretch. So will be fun to sweat the end of the tournament and the cut line on Friday afternoon / evening, depending on where you are. Noto, anything else on the course before we get going?
I did listen to the Friday Egg podcast. They had Jeff Shackelford on. He helped with the restoration of the course, and he was saying that the USGA wants to highlight the course's features rather than trick it out. He thinks the winning score is going to be 13, 14 under par range, which would be very unlike most U.S. Opens that we see. But we'll see how that plays out if it does get firm fast and they grow up the rough and all that fun stuff. But I think it's going to require a solid all-around test.
All right, let's go ahead and dig into the golfers here. Pretty crazy. I think this is the first time in a while that we've had 5 golfers above 10K, and Rory McIlroy is not one of them when he's in the field. So we've got Scheffler, of course, who's just been nuts, tee to green this year. We've got Rahm, we've got Brooks, always in contention in the majors. We've got Cantlay, and we've got Hovland as your 10K plus golfers this week. Jacob, I'm going to throw this top tier to you first. What are you doing with the top 5 this week?
My biggest question is, how's Cantlay that expensive? What has he done to deserve that price, right? I think that obviously you can make a case for any of these 5, right? Hovland will be the one that people shy away from, playing some really good golf recently, working on a short game with his coach, Joseph Mayo, working on some different shots. When you build rosters this week, if you put any of these, well, especially the top 2, if you put either one of those guys in your roster and start playing around with it, you just sort of really see what that actually costs and how the structure is. You can't argue going against either of those guys, right? I think that they're the top 2 favorites to win, in my opinion. I'm not crazy about Brooks. At the end of the week, if you see him, if he wins, it's not going to be a surprise by any means, but I definitely want some exposure to Scheffler and Rahm. It's just that at what point, when you talk about, I think it's really important to talk about rosters this week. 6 of 6 is going to be pretty hard, right? 60 in ties. So if you get 6 of 6 through, so if you build a Scotty Scheffler roster, and then let's say you want to go down and grab somebody, right around that 8,900 mark or a little bit lower, then you've got to really get value, right? So it's more of what he costs, not his talent. So if you're building those rosters, you have to tell a story in which you think there's some guys at the bottom that can perform well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not your typical major pricing that's super soft. It's not the hardest pricing we've seen, but not what we'd often see from DraftKings for a major. It's a little bit more difficult than that. So, Noto, what are you doing with the top 5?
Sorry, making sure I wasn't on mute there. Okay, quick trivia game. So we know Scotty Scheffler's been great tee to green. Any guesses on how many strokes he's gained tee to green in his last 3 events alone?
No idea.
Any guesses? 51.
Ooh, I was going to say 30. That would have been way low.
Yeah, unbelievable how good he is striking the ball. He could be winning events while losing 4 strokes putting on a weekly basis. So I do like Scheffler. Rahm, anytime you get him in California, he's been, winner here a couple times at Torrey. He plays the Amex well. He plays Pebble well. Pretty much anyone that you want to look at, he plays well. Brooks at majors is solid. Obviously coming off the win of the PGA Championship. Cantlay does feel a little bit overpriced, like Jacob mentioned, but he's a California kid. I think he's very familiar with this place, so that obviously helps a little bit. And then Hovland, T7 or better in 3 straight majors. It's hard to poke a hole in any of these guys. If I'm going to rank them, I'm probably going to go Scheffler, Rahm, Cantlay, Brooks, Hovland. But, yeah, to Jacob's point, roster construction is going to be important this week. The 7K range is pretty strong, but it's not like you want, your third guy in your lineup to be 7Ks, and that's kind of what you have to do if you take 1 or 2 of these guys.
Ironically, I did my rankings on the site right before we went live, and I ranked those 5 the exact way you just ranked the 5 of them. So I guess I'm in agreement there. Just impossible to fade Scheffler at this point with the way he's playing tee to green. So, while a lot of times I'll fade the chalkiest guy in the top range, just really tough to do that right now. He's on one of the hottest tee to green stretches that we've seen in a few years here. So, like Scheffler the best, I think you can mix and match the rest of the bunch. I don't have a strong take, but I did rank them Rahm, Cantlay, Brooks, Hovland, same order you did there. So, but I will probably look to start a lot of lineups right below this tier. Rory, while he hasn't shut the door the last couple of weeks, it's good to see that he's at least been in the mix. I think that's enough to say he's in play at a U.S. Open course where he's 9,900. Schauffele always, pops, and I can see that he's popping in Noto's model in these types of events. Could this perhaps be a time that Max Homa, with his familiarity in California, can do something in a major? Then you got, guys with slight injury concerns with Spieth and Morikawa here in the 9K range as well. Noto, I'll let you go first on this next tier.
Yeah, you mentioned Xander. It's hard not to like him. It does look like he's going to be very popular. But, man, he's played in 6 U.S. Opens, never finished worse than T14 from California. He's got a lot of ties to the area. He's obviously familiar with the golf course. He's been good in majors. He rates out well on difficult courses. He rates out well in terms of the whole yardage breakdown that I do each week. And he's been in good form, too. He's been a top 25 machine. Now, whether he can break through and win, that's another story. I do think I'm going to bet him anyway because I'm always a sucker for trusting my model. But that's a good price point. I don't mind starting lineups there. Rory, I have no idea what to do with Rory. I mean, 2 Sundays in a row where he's kind of let everyone down when he's been in contention. So that's a little bit of a concern for me. I do like Max Homa. You mentioned another California guy. Can he finally break through and do it at a major? This is apparently one of his favorite courses. So I'm willing to, play him even though he doesn't have the major track record. The big question for me is going to be Spieth. I want to get Jacob's take on that. Obviously, he was dealing with the wrist injury, but he came back, played great at Memorial. A couple of people that have seen him recently have said, they haven't seen him strike the ball this well in a very long time. So that's definitely interesting to me. And then the bottom of the range, I really like Cam Smith at 9,000. This is just kind of a magical type of course. And, man, he's got that everything but off the tee. He's kind of got going for him. He talked about, losing some motivation at the start of the year, and he kind of really ramped it up before the Masters. So technically, if this is, in terms of a golf season, he's only a few months in terms of, really prepping hard. So I think he's interesting at 9K flat.
All right, Jacob, your takes on this range. So just kind of a quick question as I analyze this range. Storyline wise, do you think that some guys, even though they said they did not know anything, knew that something was up? I got a different vibe around the PGA Championship, and shortly after, there wasn't as much, I hate you, Brooks, I hate you. I mean, they all hate Patrick Reed, probably. Chambo's a goofball. So if there is this kind of like unwritten thing that, hey, this LIV Tour is going away, not that it affects how the guys play golf as golf, but from a narrative standpoint, as a guy like Cam Smith, do they feel more comfortable now seeing Brooks play well? Maybe they know that, hey, they're going to have to pay a fine, but they can come back, right? Does that affect anything? Does it affect how people, like, I'm very anti-LIV. Like, does it affect how I might pick people? So that's kind of rumbling around in my head. I think Max Homa is too expensive. I mean, how does he get that bump just because he's from there? Do you remember, like, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years ago, what was it? Fitzpatrick said my favorite golf course was wasn't it Harbortown? And
Yeah.
taking forever to win. I mean, just because somebody's played there, like he's too expensive for his price from a performance-based standpoint. Like 500 cheaper than Rory. I mean, Rory feels like way too cheap. A guy that drivers supposedly is a weapon out here. If you can drive the ball down there and he hits his long irons as good as anybody. I'll preface this by saying I never get Rory right, but I want a lot of Rory this week. Same with Xander. I really like both of those guys. Not sure about Colin. I think he's injured enough that unless I get some different news, I just don't think he's the golfer I want exposure to. I mean, Jordan appears to be healthy and ready to go, hitting it well. A guy that should always contend in the U.S. Open, in my opinion. I always stray away from the defending champion. It's just one of those, fallacies that I stick with. Or superstitions I just always kind of stray away from, although I do like Fitzpatrick. I mean, he's won a major and he's cheaper than Homa. I don't get it.
And Noto, he brought up an interesting point there about maybe the mindset of some of these guys. Is that going to be a little bit different now, knowing that it's probably not going to be their last so-and-so major because of the world golf ranking points, or there is going to be a path back on to the PGA Tour at some point. Do you put any stock into that? It was a thought that kind of crossed my mind as well.
It's interesting for sure. I mean, the best guys from LIV had some exemptions for a while anyway. Being Brooks and Cam Smith and DJ and them, but I mean, it's certainly interesting. I don't know what we can do with that, actionable when it comes to DFS, but it's interesting for sure. And as far as Fitzpatrick, man, I agree with you that the defending champ, it's kind of hard to see him going back to back. But when you think of a guy that can just put it wherever he wants off the tee, he hits that lower ball too, so he's going to get a ton of rollout on these fairways. So I think he's at least interesting. I might not win, but 9100, I think he's interesting.
All right, let's go ahead and move down into the 8K range. Some interesting names here. Our early numbers still have a lot of ownership on Matsuyama, which surprises me a little bit. I think that might go down throughout the week. There's been some reports of him still struggling a bit with his various injuries. But Hatton's been playing well. Finau always tends to be popular in these types of events. Justin Thomas, it seems like people are finally exiting kind of his ship here in terms of where ownership lands, with him appearing to be cheap, just has had trouble putting it all together this year. You got Lowry, DJ, Burns, and Jason Day also, and Cam Young, all in that 8K range this week. Jacob, I'll throw this 8K range to you first. What do you think?
Really makes me sick to my stomach, but I like DJ a lot at that price. I mean, it's just too cheap. I think so. When we had the Masters, you had Brooks was like 7,600 or something like that, right? Way too cheap. And so you had to account for that. Like DJ at 8,300, is this the DJ like that's dominated and played well? I mean, we don't know, but we saw Brooks play well, right? I mean, U.S. Open champion, great driver of the golf ball. I mean, at 8,300, I mean, it's just, I think you have to really think about, he could be a guy, if you don't have him, that you have to shut your laptop day one. He plays well, because he's going to be a good fit. He allows you to do it. He's going to fit in a lot of builds. So I like DJ a lot. JT and Tony are two players at that price point I want exposure to. Hatton has played so well without winning. It's amazing, right? But does he have enough patience to win a U.S. Open and a major? Who putts worse right now, Shane Lowry or Scotty Scheffler? I mean, not that they're bad putters.
The last few events, it's been Scheffler.
Yeah. I mean, Shane Lowry's awful too, though. I mean, he has putted so poorly, right? If you've had any kind of like daily sweats on him, and he just like, I don't know, it just kind of wheels off. So, yeah, I mean, I think in that price range, those are the players I'm looking at. Sung Jae is just, he's not a guy that I want exposure to in a major. I just, until he proves me otherwise, I just think that I'm kind of like dipping below that price point.
Yeah, I don't love this 8K range a ton. Noto mentioned earlier the 7K range is pretty loaded. I kind of agree with that. I think I'd rather play some of those guys. I do like the DJ call. Of course, I played him over Brooks at the PGA, so that didn't work out very well. But I like the logic behind that. I like Finau here. Hatton's going to be really popular and seems to be the safe guy. But Noto, your thoughts on the 8Ks?
Yeah, real quick, I want to answer a couple questions from the chat. Scott Foster, NBA ref, he says, has Scotty played well on the West Coast? Not seeing many results, but he knows, Rahm obviously dominates there. So I looked it up, and Scheffler was, where did it go? T12 at the Genesis this year, T7 at the Genesis last year, T20 at the Farmers. So he doesn't play in California a lot, but still some pretty good finishes for Scheffler in California. And then Mr. Gerg, chat regular, wants to know, is Morikawa and Cam Young the two most overrated golfers on tour? I've always been kind of under the field in terms of Morikawa. So I could see it. He does have 2 major wins, so it's hard to call a 2 major winner underrated or overrated, sorry. And then Cam Young, man, he's just been in bad form. I think if you ignore what's happened the last 4 months, I mean, he's been one of the better golfers on tour, especially in majors. So any takes on those 2 questions?
I'll take a stab. 2 majors, hard to say overrated.
Yeah.
I think Cam Young, so you look at the talent set, right? Like, what is he, we look at basketball players or baseball players. How does he play golf? How is his talent? I mean, this is the type of course. If he's like under 10%, I want some exposure to Cam Young, right? Because like this is the type of golf course. Driver's a weapon, great ball striker, right? 8K, what does he have to do for you? So I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I mean, there's so many talented players out there. Something on Scotty to note, I believe that they've had a few college events at this course, and he's played it and 4 times too, so he knows it. I mean, as it was, it's changed, but yeah, I don't. It's hard to say overrated. Ricky was like always my longtime overrated guy.
And it's easy to, it's easy for the most recent results to cloud judgment. It's all in how, how you want to handle longer term form versus shorter term form. And Morikawa, I just don't think he's been completely healthy here this year. So, I agree on the approach of just not playing him this week, but to call him overrated long term, I don't know, it feels a little unfair given his overall body of work. But all right, Noto, your thoughts on the 8Ks here.
All right, so the best 2 golfers on the PGA Tour in terms of strokes gained total this year: Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm. Number 3, Tyrrell Hatton. He's been incredible this season. He's been consistent. I know he's a hothead. I watched his round on Saturday, and I thought he was going to go out in the crowd and start punching people. So that's always a concern at a difficult course. But, hey, if this plays, 13, 14 under par, like, a couple people have suggested it might, then, maybe he won't get as mad as we think. Or
even what if he's not 13 or 14 under par and he's 5 over par?
But I mean, even he's talked about it. Rahm's talked about it. Like, some guys just need to let out that steam instead of holding it inside and pretending like nothing's wrong. So, I mean, he's been playing so well that I do like Hatton quite a bit. I've always liked Finau in California. Looks like if he was in a little better form, I think he'd be more expensive and probably higher owned. And the same for Cam Young. So I'm going to be overweight on those 2. And the rest of the range, other than DJ, I do like the DJ call from Jacob. But other than that, I don't have a strong take on anybody.
Neither do I. I think the 7K range is where I'll land with a lot of plays, and we're going to get a little bit more chalk here in the 7K range than usual. I don't know what it is. It feels like the DraftKings algorithm didn't quite weight the most recent performances as much as usual. Some of that's with the pricing being out earlier, but it's not like it was, 2 weeks ago. The pricing came out late last week. So you got Fleetwood at 7,900. You've got Rose, who's been playing very well, at 7,700. You've got Adam Scott at 7,500. Wyndham Clark has been a little more hit or miss, but has some high-end results. And a few other guys here in the 7Ks that are probably going to crack mid-teens in terms of ownership. So Noto, how are you handling kind of some of the chalky plays, and who are some of your favorites?
Yeah, it's always tough with guys coming off of an emotional loss. If Tommy Fleetwood would have just, finished T2 and not had to go into the playoff and lose, I would be very excited about playing him at 7,900. But man, I don't know what to do now that, coming off of that loss. He's a great fit for the course, I think. But that ownership plus, I don't know. I just don't know. He's had a lot of close calls in his career, so it's obviously not his first one. But that does worry me a little bit. I'm more willing to eat the chalk with Justin Rose. He's been playing great, especially with the irons. He's improved his accuracy off the tee this year too, which I like. And then at 7,500, I like Ricky Fowler. He's been a top 20 machine. I like Patrick Reed. He's been great at the U.S. Open throughout his career. He's been playing pretty well on LIV. He's made the cut in both of the majors so far this season. And then Adam Scott as well. Australians tend to play well in California. His ball striking numbers have been improving lately. The putter's been on fire for like a year now. And another guy that I just like on, tougher tracks. So I think a lot of good chalk in this range. And if you want to get away from it, my favorite is probably going to be Sahith Theegala. I mean, I've been underweight on this guy for 20 straight weeks. Now nobody wants to play him, even though from California, I think he went to Pepperdine. And he's supposed to be familiar with the course, good short game. And his biggest weakness is, that he sprays it off the tee. And I don't think that's going to hurt him as much here as it would at most U.S. Opens.
All right. I like the Adam Scott call. Connors is another guy that I think is interesting with Fleetwood and Rose kind of sandwiched around him. In terms of price, Fleetwood's at 79, Rose at 77, Connors at 78. Won't get as much ownership as he otherwise would normally at that price tag. So, Jacob, your thoughts on the 7Ks here?
So I still like Fleetwood. Kind of surprised to see the ownership numbers as high early in the week, but it's just too cheap, right? Like I was a little bit surprised. I'm not sure who he worked with in the past, but I don't know if y'all caught on the coverage how he's joined the Harmon camp. So working with Butch or Claude or someone in the family, right? So swinging well, putted really well too. One thing I will say about last week, if we think about trending this week, is that you saw a lot of putters that were used to putting on slower greens. I think they said they were close to 11 last week. So this week they won't be that. So if you're counting on him to have another hot putting week, Fleetwood definitely putts. He grew up playing over there in the greens and across the pond are traditionally slower. But I think that you've got to have some Fleetwood in your builds and Rose. And I hate to say this, I kind of like Keegan Bradley a little bit this week. I'm looking in this range as I'm building. I'm trying to figure out what combos I want to pick. I'm trying not to put – like how many of these guys is too many in your lineup, right? And then if you have them, I think you need to have a rule that you're not putting two of the most popular guys together, right? If you're mixing match, if you're building 150. Because I think you can make a case for – I'm not a big Wyndham Clark guy. I would take out Clark and Reed in my builds and probably Bryson, but I love Adam Scott. So, like, as you're building these, you got to kind of mix and match the right combos. I want probably zero exposure to Tom Kim as much as I really like him long term.
Yeah, good day, good week that you can set some build rules and set a global cap on the projected ownership for your whole roster. That's another way you can do it. You can either, set rules to where you only play a max of one or two of a certain group in a lineup, which is what Jacob was referencing there, or you can set global max lineup ownership for individual lineups, which ends up kind of serving a similar function. So either of those methods would work. Let's see. Noto, anything else on this range for you?
I think that's it for me.
All right. If we can kind of maybe clean up the bottom part of the 7K range here. I didn't touch on a lot of these guys, but you got Nick Taylor coming off a win. Looks like Siwoo Kim and Mito are going to get some ownership at the bottom part of the 7K range. Guys that we've been targeting at majors, Gary Woodland, my boy Ryan Fox, who's kind of cooled off a bit. Looks like we got Russell Henley with some ownership down here. But anything else above 7K for you, Noto?
Yeah, a few guys, the popular ones. I do like Mito Pereira. He's been in great form on LIV. He's popped to the PGA Championship last year. Had some good ball striking numbers at the PGA Championship this year. I don't have a ton of interest in Siwoo at 12%. He's a guy that rates out pretty well for me, but I'm okay looking elsewhere. Denny McCarthy, last time we saw him, he talked about loving hard golf courses and nearly won a Memorial. So I like him this week at 7,200. You mentioned Woodland. He's been a top 10 ball striker on tour. He's won a U.S. Open in California. So his game seems to be trending in the right direction. And then Russell Henley is 7,100. If you don't want to play the bomber narrative, he's more of the accuracy iron type. And he's been playing well, 4 top 20s in his last 5 starts. So a guy that historically was very consistent and kind of rounding into form before the third major.
Yeah, I don't mind him this week as well if that ownership stays around that 5 to 7% range too. Jacob, your thoughts on rounding out the 7K range?
Like Harris English a lot. Someone who's been playing better, has a decent U.S. Open record, so he's gained shots in tee to green in his last 3 starts in the U.S. Open, kind of getting his form back together. I don't think he'll be very popular, so he could be somebody that you could pivot to. So he has a third and a fourth prior to last year, and I mean, battled some health issues, right? So I think that price more appropriate to his recent form, but prior to that was trending in a better direction. I like Ryan Fox, the bomber narrative. Cam Davis kind of interests me, right? He's been playing pretty good, so I think I want some exposure to Cam Davis. I really, as I start to build rosters, though, I think I only want one of these types of golfers on my roster, right? The lower than 7,500. Siwoo Kim just always interests me just because of the way he plays golf, but he's been absolutely awful in the U.S. Open, so I'm not quite sure where I'll end up on him. But I think that you can fall in love with some of these names. Like Keith Mitchell's played well this year, but when you start really thinking about what do you want out of this price range, these are guys that you have to do more than make the cut. So that's kind of where I stand on this range. I'm not super crazy about it.
Yeah, the $7,500 to $7,900 range is definitely the spot where you're going to find more of the safer plays and guys that maybe have a little bit more upside. And then that's especially true. And to Jacob's point earlier in the show, once you get into the 6K range, it gets pretty ugly in a hurry. Moronk was one guy that he missed the cut on the number last week, but he was really the only guy rolling through the 6Ks that I thought, hey, I've got some interest in this guy. I don't find a whole lot here that you feel comfortable rostering in a U.S. Open. Obviously, with the format of the U.S. Open and the fact that there's a lot of local qualifiers and part of what makes the U.S. Open so special, but it also makes the bottom of the field pretty weak. So, Noto, anything below 7K that's sticking out for you?
Yeah, a few guys that'll make my player pool. Moronk is one of them. You mentioned him. I like Patrick Rogers, went to Stanford. So very familiar in California. He's been having a good season as well. Adam Hadwin, as long as there's no internal bleeding, I think he's interesting because he always plays well in California. And then, Putnam rates out well, Shank, Dylan Wu, but nobody that I really, want to play. Actually, I do like Sam Stevens a little bit. One of the better total drivers of the ball. He's been playing well recently. And, he qualified through sectionals and then withdrew last week. So I think he just headed straight to California to get some practice in, which I kind of like this week. I kind of like the guys that didn't end up playing last week more than the ones that did.
Chances to get a few more looks at the course, maybe with all the quirks. Jacob, anybody below 7K that you like?
I like the Rogers call. He's qualified for this event 3 years in a row, going through the longest day in golf, which is the 36-hole qualifier 2 weeks before. So from the area, just, guy that you can't fall in love with and lock in every roster, right? Because he's definitely volatile. But, like, at that price range, I think that he's got enough upsides, should be familiar with the golf course. There's just not a whole lot in this range. I think that you start looking down, so you go, like, what golfers are underpriced or could help you get some – top end salary relief. I'm not a fan of him personally because he went to the LIV, but Thomas Peters, there's a talent, right? Major championships, played in a handful of them. A long hitter off the tee. I wouldn't mind having some exposure to him. There's enough upside, but outside of that, maybe you start digging down. You might like a Sam Bennett. Like, he's played well at the Masters, didn't play well last week, but you just start looking at what types of golfers. If I'm picking somebody from down here, they definitely have to excel at driving the golf ball and hitting a long way, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's. I think I saw a note also, just as a small word of caution on Peters. I think he withdrew mid-round during the last LIV event. I did not cross-check that, but I did see that on Twitter today. I like the call if he's healthy, though, as a guy that could potentially surprise down here. All right. Anything else? Noto? Anybody else?
The random guy that pops in the model. Last week it was Peter Quest, who actually played good for a couple rounds.
Yeah.
This week it is, where did he go? Jacob Solomon. Don't know anything about him. 6,100. And Alejandro Del Rey was the other one. So we need Skyhook to come on and talk about those type of guys. But yeah,
popping in the model. All right.
Probably not going to make my player pool.
Let's see. You guys want to do a snake draft, or you want to pass this week?
I'm down doing if
yeah, absolutely.
Get enough people.
All right. Well, we'll do a 6. Let's do a 6. I don't think I got to get out of here in fairly short order, so 12 might take a little too long. But let's do a 6. So if you're unfamiliar, we go to DraftKings Golf Lobby and click on Snake Draft. The $5 6-man is I had to scroll down a ways to find it, but there was a 0 out of 6 $5 6-man on there. I am going to be the first one in, so it should be 1 now 2. Maybe that was one of you guys hopping in there. And then we'll fill that up, and then I'll share my screen once we get that rolling here.
What do you guys think the 6-6 percentage is going to be this week?
That's tough, like Jacob said, with 60 in ties. But you do have a lot of kind of lower hanging golfers in there. I don't know. And there's also going to be a lot more chalk maybe than normal. So if 1 or 2 of those guys misses, it could make a big difference. I don't know. I'll throw out 6%.
That's probably it. I had to relog back in. Sorry, guys. So I might miss it. Let me see.
That's all right. Just filled.
Yeah, I did.
No worries.
So I will. Oop! I did push the wrong button there. Noto got the first pick. I wonder who he's going to take. I will share my screen.
Also, we're contractually obligated to talk about Steven Yeager, not on the field this week, but Mr. Gerg wanted to know about him. So, yeah.
He's still doing okay.
I'm guessing he tried to qualify.
I'm sure. I mean, most of the...
Oh, did Wesley Bryan make the field? I was watching his YouTube. I don't know. Must not have. He filmed all of his qualifying, and I only watched the first half of it, so I wasn't sure if he made it.
I don't think he did.
He watched the unimportant parts.
So spoiler alert for myself. He didn't get the job done.
All right. I don't know why it does that. It doesn't show me a countdown, but seems like it does that when I share my screen right after we start. No, you got a countdown on yours?
Yeah, it's like 40 seconds.
All right. So get it rolling here in a minute.
Have you guys seen an over-under on the winning score yet?
I have not. Let me see if I can find one quick. I forget what book I found that on last time, though. Yeah, I think last time I just saw it on Twitter, so I do not see one.
Now mine just says I'm out of time. So I don't know.
Well, if you get stuck, you're going to get Scheffler, so a lot of times it does that, and then it finally kicks the clock in.
Okay.
There it goes. Tough call there, taking Scheffler first. I'm sure that was a stressful one.
I'm kind of man, between him and Rahm, it's tough at the very top. Especially if it's like twice as much ownership.
Yeah, for DFS purposes, it will be interesting to see where the ownership ends up because Scheffler's just been they've both been so good.
Oh, there's a new draft board. That's kind of cool.
Mine looks the exact same.
If you click on the little draft board next to the players.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
Hey, that looks nice. Koepka going second. So, either of you have an opinion on like his real chances of winning this week?
Who? Koepka?
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah.
So I have this theory, and I mean, it could be just that I'm stubborn, but I think Brooks wins on golf courses that you can just go and hide, right? Like big boy courses, that only a certain amount of the field. I mean, it could be that type of course this week. I don't know, right? Like every major this is a super biased comment. Like there's a reason why he hasn't won a bunch of tour events, right? It's not because he's not trying, but like I don't ever see him winning on a Memorial. Not that he can play there currently, right? Or a Colonial, right? Certain types of golf courses he just plays well, and that's kind of the catered build of the majors lately, right? Big courses, just try not to make a lot of mistakes. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see how this plays out this week.
Yeah, I don't have a strong take on that, but it's a good point.
Like last week's event, he would have no chance making that many birdies, and I just don't see him being that type of golfer that makes a ton of birdies in a shootout event.
What was the one he won? Was it FedEx St. Jude? That was a surprise to me when he won that one. But he's another guy that doesn't play a ton in California historically.
I'm excited. I'm ready for primetime golf.
Yeah, it goes to like 11, right? Eastern time?
Mm-hmm.
Coverage?
Yeah, that would be like 8 Pacific, so might end up being too late for old man like me. Although I'm Central Time, so
same.
I do like this new little draft board thing, even though I didn't know what the heck you were talking about at first.
Is Tyler Hero going to lead a comeback for the Heat?
No, the finals are over. And we'll be over by the time most people that watch us on playback will be watching. If not, I'll eat my crow. But
yeah, I think it's over. It was lucky to go this many games.
No, you didn't mention Jason Day. Are you off of him after the win and then the not practicing the next course?
Man, I don't know. And then he missed a cut at Memorial. So I don't know what to think of Jason Day. I like the course for him. I always like him in majors. So I'll probably play some, but not as strong of a take as I had prior to his win. All right. It's kind of tough right here. Chase some upside. Cam Young.
Recency bias there, huh?
Oh, I got auto drafted on Morikawa. Whoops.
Pretty
I got
darn good.
According to Mr. Gerg, I got the 2 most overrated golfers on tour.
Yeah, you got Finau and Morikawa back. Those were back-to-back picks at the turn. I'm surprised.
If he was healthy, who I'd love to play this week if he was healthy?
Who's that?
Zalatoris.
Oh, yeah. Anytime he's playing, I'm on Zalatoris.
And he wants his 140 million.
Yeah, what are some course comps?
I've heard Augusta.
I like that one.
Beth Page too. Which
I like Wiley a little bit, even though it's not going to play nearly as easy.
Say Wiley plays like 30 under.
But because all the approach shots are going to be uneven lies.
But isn't Wiley messed up because of the elevation and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you're going to get a lot of rollout. Just something that makes sense.
Something that's worth paying attention to this week is like the interviews, right? I think more so than normal, but will we get asked? Will those questions get asked? Right? Will the interviews be, hey, what do you think about the merger? Even though we've asked us to.
Yes. Yeah, that's what the questions will be.
Right. So how much? So you've got to kind of dig around. I've seen some videos already of, not surprising, U.S. Open rough around the greens that like they drop a ball and you can't see it. Right. So
I hate those videos. No approach shot comes in that way. And they always find the thickest little patch that they can find on the course.
So I would pay attention a lot of this might be a great week if you don't already do it to get on social media a bit more and follow some players. They'll post some videos around the course, or just you might not hear that mainstream interviews as much, but I would definitely, I'm going to pay attention a lot as the week goes on to get a feel for the golf course.
Hey, Michael Kim got in the field, so I'm sure he'll give us thoughts. He's been awesome on Twitter.
Yeah, he has. Who withdrew to get him in?
I don't know. He said he was the first alternate, but then today he was in the DraftKings pool, so I don't know.
Chelsea, Michael Block almost qualified for this too.
Oh,
That would have sent the social media world a buzz.
I think like one or two shots out of making it. I mean, he played good. Shot like it was a.
I guess there was 2 because it was waiting for the last 60 update in official world golf rankings. There were 5 spots available for that, and only 3 got in. So the other top 2 alternates also got in.
he said he was going to go Tanya Harding on someone so he could get in. That was good.
It's a dangerous tweet, and then somebody ends up getting hurt, and then it's everybody comes looking after.
Then Adam Hadwin gets tackled.
Right?
How many young people don't know what the Tanya Harding record is?
So that was my first thought too. I'm like, yeah, I'm old. I get the reference, but even I was just a kid when that happened.
Whoops, got auto drafted again. Oh, well.
I almost did. All right, it was my last pick here. I'll go Cam Davis. All right, I'll bring up the draft board one more time. We'll round it out. And
Justin Sell's a California kid, right?
Yeah, he'd be a good flyer.
I want to say.
Look at that team, man. There's some strong teams in this.
Yeah, with the 6, with this kind of field and only 6 people in the draft, you get some pretty good rosters. We're not going to, the John Daly's for the for the last picks or the qualifiers. But some pretty good rosters. Will be fun as always. And with that, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Thanks as always for listening to us, and thanks to Jacob for popping in again this week. Always appreciate him coming on. Thanks to Noto as usual for joining us. Thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes as well. And I am Justin. Hope you all have a good U.S. Open week, everybody. Take care, and we will catch you next week. Same time, same place. See you later.